I've always been a fan of the dark side.
Battlefront's 2 campaign generated hype as a key selling point of the game. It was a highly requested feature that even John Boyega, Finn himself, helped get into the game. It promised to explore the side of the Empire through the lens of a special forces unit during and after the battle of the second Death Star. It received a mixed reception at launch, but was promptly overshadowed by the game's controversial microtransaction-infested launch.
EA is now tearing the results apart and addressing fan concerns. Specifically, it's addressing problems with its loot box economy.
So progression is now loot boxes. The progression in Battlefront 2, a $60 game, is now 100% a copy of a mobile free-to-play game where you were paid $0.
After the reviews were out and more players began to dive into the game, Battlefront 2 found itself under greater scrutiny from the community and press alike. Eventually, even mainstream press sites such as CNN and the Huffington Post began to cover the game's focus on microtransactions and loot crates.
Battlefront 2 is very black and white about this. You either have the star cards that make you win, or you have nothing and you suck dick. The upgrades very literally make you better at the game.
EA just disabled in-game purchases, also known as microtransactions, from Battlefront 2 and made a post on their website apologizing for everything that's happened the last week or so regarding the microtransactions and all the drama that I think all of you have probably seen by now.
The campaign was developed by the newly formed Motive Studios and starred Janina Gavankar as Iron Versio. From the behind-the-scenes interviews and the actual campaign itself, you can see it was clearly made with a lot of love and care. The writing, the worlds, and the lore developed throughout are pinnacly Star Wars and are immersed in the universe, what with the references to and the development of niche concepts. As an example, in the campaign, you explore just how Kylo's mind read would actually look and feel to him, which is pretty cool. And you can acquire the backstory on background items such as Luke's compass from The Last Jedi. You can also see love in smaller details, like characters pointing out enemies of different classes, or how the ship dialogue changes depending on which perspective you're playing from. Taking a look back, we can see the campaign was only decently received, with most classifying it as not really memorable, and citing the quick switch by Iden to the Rebels as a reason to classify it as disappointing. But I would wager that the most only had a single playthrough and really quickly moved on to other modes of this game. I'm included in that statistic, so I wanted to replay the campaign again and see how it holds up the second time around. The story is way more enjoyable the second time around. Knowing everybody's motivation, even if vaguely, leaves the speculation behind and lets you enjoy the journey. After the first run, I thought Item Switch was supposed to be a twist and just was poorly executed. But second time around, with hindsight, you can really enjoy seeing an already professional but skeptical Iden reject the dogma of the Empire her father has fallen so blind to, quickly switch her perspective in her moment of reflection and embrace the fight for the rights of the people, but this time through the rebellion, as she now sees them as the correct avenue to do so. The theme of the story is what Luke says.
The choice to be better.
Dal and Iden both come to see this, although it would have been nice to see Iden have her moment of clarity, and not only her and Dal's disillusionment. Hask and Admiral Versio fail to make the better choice, and their stubbornness ultimately leads to their downfall. Speaking of the Admiral, eventually the story turns into Iden versus her father, as you seek to disrupt him and his team on Bespin and Celeste. However, you barely see his side. I think this is a blunder. It's a classic Star Wars move to check in on the enemy's perspective. He doesn't escape with Iden, so I think it would have been creative to play as him, and see why he remains loyal to an empire clearly losing its power, structure, and leadership. By the way, I think showing just how scared and out of control the Empire got was done great. In fact, a lot of things in terms of atmosphere and authenticity were done well, but the overall pacing was a mess. It was too fast, it needed more chapters. More chapters to develop relationships, develop motivations, and develop situations. It didn't help that their way of slowing things down was a boring walk-along session that turns into a game of Guess Who then results in you picking up an annoying side character that Star Wars doesn't even have the best track record of. The change of heart comes way too fast. There are too few missions that take apart the Empire, and there's not enough time to build a bond with the characters. The missions are relatively short as well, but I don't think there would have been a problem if there were a lot of them. Only a few characters like Mr. Statsman missed the mark. The rest of the campaign has clever dialogue, that feels right at home with Star Wars and big budget storied video games. Shriv is a great testament to this. The familiar cast of characters are dead on, except maybe Leia. Only a bit though, because she's probably too quick to accept Iden. Again, the story suffered from moving too fast. The production quality is magnificent. Camera angles, animations, location, direction, it's fantastic to look at and is a worthy entry as sort of a mini movie. I particularly enjoyed the foreshadowing and parallels with current and upcoming at the time, canon material. Overall, the gameplay is super shallow, and it's all down to the AI. Coming back from multiplayer or hell, even instant action co-op, I can say confidently, the AI in the campaign absolutely sucks. Second time around, you'll be so good comparatively, there won't even be a challenge on the ground. They try to make it difficult by introducing a lot of them in waves sometimes. They even made a riot trooper to charge you, and their trump card right at the end is rocket troopers. But those are all easy to take down. They even give you the homing shot when the aerials appear, rendering the challenge completely moot. If you keep behind cover or constantly on the move, keep yourself at range and equip a sniper, you'll be done in no time. Stealth seems like a pointless addition. When you're first introduced to it, it seems dope, just like the rest of the super cool but ultimately unrepresentative first mission. It's easy to just blast away from range, and eventually, in all the missions, there will be a point where stealth is impossible. It's definitely not a cool element. Neat takedown animation though. The story may not be well paced, but the missions by themselves are. They're all seamless, done in one swift take. If you don't die obviously, as you effortlessly partake in action from one end of the map to the other. Naboo, as an example, is easy to understand. Defend Dal at points and fight alongside the rebels while you make your way to the next checkpoint. Enjoy some nice scripted moments along the way. The mechanics are too linked to multiplayer. There's no reason why Iden would need star cards or rolling sets of abilities that reset anyway after each mission. Considering how little time you spend on the ground as Iden, the star cards present as false choices, because a trusty sniper rifle and good old-fashioned aim will do just fine. This limits the uniqueness Motive could have explored. It's sad because Iden exclusive features are fun, like the droid's abilities to heal, scan and stun, or Iden's unique takedown animations. But further expansion to creativity like this wasn't explored, and I feel like the excuse of, well, multiplayer star cards are there, set the project back. I do like the fact that the campaign, when you play as the heroes, play to their strength. Leia protects, so a mission is basically a wave defense mission. Han is aggressive and can clear squads all over the map, so he deals with large, spread out groups of stormtroopers. Lando is best equipped to deal with a lot of enemies, especially if they charge him, thanks to his stun and sharp shot. Luke is good at dealing with a lot of enemies rushing towards him from all directions. Wink and nudge to the repulse and the push there. So yes, even those bugs are perfectly suited for his abilities and attack speed. Flying is the best aspect of the campaign. Starfighter gameplay is generally one of the best features of this game already, so being able to plan it out makes it so much better. Motive is able to set up why a space fight needs to happen, has you flying around already so you're prepared, throws you into the action with warm-up enemies and ramps up the objectives from there, ultimately accumulating to one spectacular gameplay feature or visual, the most famous of course being boarding of the enemy's capital ship. These are the best paced missions, gameplay wise, and having a dynamic of defending a ship or yourself from fighters while needing to take down an objective makes these missions the most enjoyable. The campaign possesses this weird dynamic of being polished in terms of presentation and admittedly shallow gameplay, but having missing or unfinished aspects in other respects. For example, it's cool that the dialogue changes from comms to clear speech while changing perspective in the sky, but there's no meaning behind it. Maybe if other aspects change when you switch to first person in other missions and there was some sort of mechanic associated with that, like, oh, the game's totally different from first person. You feel like the characters themselves, whereas in third person you feel like a spectator. But there's nothing like that. So it feels kind of pointless. Additional actions you can take mean nothing. Only collectibles like the first time round, since they're just slice boxes. Taking down capital ship turrets or all enemies in an area, or having no lost health on accompanying Y-Wing squad stealth, etc. produce nothing. Not even additional dialogue. It is enjoyable, especially the second time around, when you're familiar with the characters and their motivations. You'll have fun in the skies. I found myself playing through it again while the servers were down, and I was surprised to find extremely likable characters throughout, a familiar Star Wars feeling, and fantastic presentation. It goes by fast enough, and I do recommend a second playthrough watch through now that the Skywalker saga films are past, and that we have a video game companion piece on the other side of the original trilogy timeline in Jedi Fallen Order. Those periods of time are the most fascinating for me, and if they are for you, I would recommend playing the campaign again and paying closer attention to the story and details found within this campaign. Ultimately, the pacing and simplistic gameplay remain the biggest factors bogging down this campaign, but I found replaying it that the story holds up and is definitely worth a re-examination and a bit more love. Hopefully Motive are given the chance to flesh out a proper game and gift us with more Star Wars, because they sort of nailed it here, and if they had a full-scale production behind them and a potential future project, I have no doubt it would definitely be worth exploring.
TIE fighters inbound. Let's take them down. Force shield destroyed. Circling back for the other.